Well, hey, let's go. I'm starting this channel for about three reasons. First, to be vulnerable. I think vulnerability is a gift. I think it's like this transportation to healing, and I'm excited to have people on to be vulnerable. Man, I'm excited to share what I've been through, to share my experiences and things like that. Number two, I want to share my heart. I want to share experiences. I do want to share stories for people to come on to share their story, and I'm excited for people to be impacted by that. And number three, if one person is impacted by this, if one person is impacted by our stories, our experiences, how we've been, what we've been through, how we've gotten to where we are, to shift a perspective, anything, if one person is impacted, I think I'm doing what God has called me to do. So without further ado, small talk with Jay Calvin. Well, hey, I wouldn't start a community, a channel of vulnerability without first being vulnerable myself. I don't think I've ever told this story on video or this in depth before, but again, I think vulnerability is a gift and I think it should be shared, and thank you for listening. I want to go through a little bit of my backstory of where I've been. The toughest part of my life, let's just start off on the elephant in the room, what we're talking about. July 16th, 2016, I lost my mom. She passed away suddenly due to overdose, and it was a quick thing. But before that, me and my sister grew up in Woodbury, New Jersey. Shout out Woodbury. We grew up in Woodbury, and not really the best environment overall. She was kind of like a mom figure. I didn't really have the best relationship with my mom. There was times where I was living with a lot of my friends. I would come home just to get trash bags of clothes, and then I would leave and I would come back. And me and my mom had this rocky relationship. There was good days, there was bad days, and I didn't really want to stay for the bad days. So I kind of left. But I always remember her having this heart for us. It was a weird thing whenever, it's like a minuscule thing, but I probably will never forget it. She always had like a Snickers on her little TV stand. And whenever I came home from school, I would come in and say hi. And even though she wanted it, like I knew she wanted the Snickers, she would always give it to me. And at 25, with everything I've been through, I think I'll always remember that she was very generous with that and for her kids. But again, she struggled with a lot of drugs, and unlike my sister, I didn't really want a part of it. Like I didn't want to hear about it, I didn't want to see it. Whenever she was going through stuff, I kind of just left and let her rock out with it. But she struggled with that for a long time, and in part, I think I struggled with school. It's not that I was a bad kid or anything like that. Like I didn't like school. I didn't have any drive. I legitimately thought I was gonna be homeless. I didn't have a passion. I didn't have anything. And while my mom was struggling with drugs and my dad wasn't in my life, and my brother is my older, I look up to him, but he was in and out doing his own thing. And I think it was just on my own. I really leaned on a lot of my friends. But July 16th, 2016, I'm gonna walk you through that day. I think the day before, I got a call, or the morning of, I got a call. I got 3 calls, missed calls from my mom, and they were missed calls. And I'm like, all right, she's probably just calling me for some college stuff. And so she calls me again, and I pick up, and I'm getting these texts, and people are calling me, and I'm like, yo, what's going on? And I get a call from my aunt. And my aunt calls me, and she basically tells me my mom passed away, and I'm in disbelief. I kind of don't agree, or I'm just in disbelief. And I'm like, what are you talking about? Like, she just called me 3 times. Like, I'll call her back. Like, relax, I'll call her back. And she calls me, and she says she passed away, and I hung up. And at this moment, I'm in Woodbury. I'm right down the street from my mom's house. Again, not staying with her, staying with one of my friends. It's weird. I go on Twitter, and like, I don't think it's real. And I think I tweet about it. Like, someone just called me and said my mom died. I think I was just trying to cope. So I tweeted that, and then people are texting me, and I'm like, it's not really real. So I kind of run down the street. My mom's house is right down the street, and I run down the street, and I see cop cars, I see tape, I see people, and I also see my brother. I see my brother Kareem, and he's kind of flipping out. I look at him and I say, well, where's my mom? Where's my mom? Where's my mom? And I'm crying, and he embraces me, and then I see people walk out. And I guess my mom dealt with a lot of drug addiction throughout her life. I think me and my sister saw a lot of stuff we shouldn't have seen as a young kid. There were times where we found her unconscious. There were times where she's talking to herself in the bathroom. There's times where, man, we don't even know who's in the house. But we knew what she was doing. And I think there's this thing with familiarity where you kind of get used to it. You kind of get regular to it. She's high, she's on this, she's doing this, she doesn't care about us. We can stay out as long as we want, and we got regular to it. So I moved with my aunt. And she almost adopted me a couple times, but again, I was like strung to my mom for some reason, and losing my mom was obviously the hardest thing in my life. At 17, just graduating from high school, I think I graduated the month before. She actually came to one of my track meets, and that was probably the only sporting event she's come to. But she came to my track meet in June, right after I graduated, and that next month she passed away. I actually tell people a lot after every conversation and things like that. I'm like, all right, love you, like, see, I love you, because I don't really remember the last conversation I had with my mom. I wish I could have told her like I loved her or things like that. In hindsight's 2020, but I look back and it was a rocky relationship, and I think I was always scared that something like this would happen. It was kind of inevitable. Through that, holding on to my church, holding on to my friends and my family, there was times where I'd go to youth and Pastor Brian would come down and he'd just hug me because he knew I was going through a lot and my heart would be so heavy. I remember going through it like really recently after the funeral and things like that. I remember just laying on my floor, just punching the floor, like kind of asking God like why. I had never really gone through something like this, seemingly so. You don't just really lose your mom right away, but I think I've learned a lot through these last 6 years. It kind of sucks because you kind of start to lose the memories, but you hold on to those ones that you'll never forget. And I think I am who I am because, one, because of Jesus, because of God. I don't think I would be here without him. Two, I think I've learned a bit of life. The Bible says that it rains on the righteous and the unrighteous. We're like, things will just happen to people that are good and people that are bad. Like there's no scale to this. But I do miss my mom a lot. I do miss, when I will have kids, when I will be married. She won't see them. She won't be there. And just like my sister has 2 kids, she hasn't seen them. But my perspective of my mom passing is a little different. I'm right down the street. I get a couple missed calls. I run there. I see the scene, and it's heartbreaking. And I see my brother. It was heartbreaking. But my sister has a little bit of a different perspective. She wasn't around. And I'm going to talk to her a little bit about her perspective of it. But again, I don't know if you've lost somebody. I don't know if you're grieving something. I don't know if like someone's sick in your family or things like that. But loss is hard. I remember people were talking to me and realizing like there is really no right thing people can just tell me or say to me to make me feel better. But they were there for me, and they were there to listen to me speak. And I think if you're going through something, if you're going through loss or grief, I think you should find somebody that you can just talk to. I've learned at 25 years old that like talking to people, being in a relationship with people is like that key to healing. Like you never really want to talk about it. I didn't want to talk about it for the longest time, simply because like I would just start crying and I wouldn't be able to talk about it. I wouldn't be able to think about it. And at this point, I can tell you on the other side of it, not fully, still battling, still dealing, but being vulnerable with people, talking to people, being in relationships with people have definitely helped. And I think perspective is key. So I'm going to get my sister's perspective, which again, I've never really heard too much in depth. So everything on recording, but I'm going to get her perspective of when she found out and how she kind of went through that. All right, well, hey, we're here with my sister for her perspective on our mom's loss. It's a little different than mine, and I'm super excited to hear hers. I've actually never heard it before. So this is you. What's your name?
Jennah.
Well, yeah, Jennah, let's talk about your perspective a little. Brother, sister, you can see the resemblance. But your perspective on how you found out, where you were, and things like that.
Yeah, so July 16th, 2016, I was actually sitting in a church, and my cousin was next to me, and she was like getting messages on Facebook, and she's like, I need you to call me right away. It was her neighbor messaging her, and so she calls her and she's like, hey, like, what's wrong? And she's like, Jenny just passed away. And so my cousin like pulls me and my aunt out of the church service, and she's like, your mom just passed away. And I was just like kind of not responsive.
Weren't you in North Carolina?
Yeah, I was in North Carolina on vacation. So I was just like not responsive, didn't really believe it. And then Kaka had like fallen to the ground, like
Really?
on her knees, like, oh my God,
Oh
no,
my gosh.
like so in shock and like devastated. And I just like, the church was only down the street from the house that we were staying at. So I just like ran down the street to the lady that like called Leah. And I was like, are you sure? Like, I don't think I believe you.
Really?
And so I like called mommy. I like kept calling her. And she wasn't answering. So I think that's when it hit me, like, okay, something's wrong. And then I think I talked to you maybe, or Kareem called you guys.
Yeah, one of you guys called me.
And you guys were like, you guys were there, you guys were at the scene. So it kind of confirmed everything. And I think like just that car ride home, 8 hours, longest car ride of my life.
Yeah.
Just like wanting to be with my family at that point, and just like not knowing what was going on back home, and like just like having a million questions like go through my head, like how did this happen, like only if I was there. And like I had just talked to her the day before, and it was my cousin's birthday, and I had called her like, hey, what are you doing? No, nothing. All right, see you in a few weeks. And then she was like, I love you, bye. And so like that was the last thing that she said to me, and I'll never forget that conversation. But yeah, it was definitely a real moment.
So we definitely have two different perspectives.
Yeah, absolutely.
You remember your last conversation, I don't.
Mm-hmm.
You kind of you were far away, I was right down the street.
Yeah.
And you had a different relationship with her, yeah?
Yeah, so my main thing with like, when you know something's going on, unlike Jaquay, who like kind of ran away from the problem, I was like, I need to fix this, and I need to like figure out why it's happening and like solve it. So I didn't leave her side. I was always with her. I was making sure she was okay, and like there was times where I would like take her phone and hide it so she couldn't like talk to drug dealers, or like lock the door so nobody can come in, and like I would do crazy things. I would like broke her cigarettes and threw them in the toilet one time, and she got so mad at me.
Flush them down the toilet.
Yeah. But I would just like do whatever I could to make sure that like she couldn't get what she was trying to get.
Yeah, again, like I don't know why I was so scared of it. Like I remember her friend, Miss Sabrina. I don't know how far it was, but they found her passing away like really suddenly like that. And I don't know if we talked about it or not, but like we were like, that could have been mommy. Like, that could have been her.
Yeah.
So part of me is, I feel like you felt like you could have did more.
Yeah. So
but
like
inevitably I don't think you could have.
Right.
We know that now, yeah.
Yeah. So like the day before I left to go on vacation, she like kept saying to me like, you're going away for too long, like because I was going for 2 weeks. She was like, just stay home. And so that always brings me back to like, dang, like I what if I was there? Like I could have helped her. And then like obviously now I know that like when Jesus calls you home, like everybody has a date, so I couldn't have done anything obviously. But like I think before I knew God, like that was something that like I held on to for myself, and like was like beating myself up about.
Right. Yeah, I don't think I actually like felt the presence of God or knew Him. Maybe before that instant, you know what I mean? Like
right.
It was different. It was just different. There's something about like going to church and then like being there, or actually needing Him, where you don't know what else you're gonna do.
Yeah.
And I think it was that point for us. Both of us don't really have dads, actually. You know, I mean, not really. We don't really have dads in our life. And then we had a mom that was struggling. And again, we're not bashing her or anything like that.
No.
She had dinner for us. She provided for us. We went to school. Like, she did those
She made
things.
it happen.
She's definitely a functional
Made
drug
it
addict.
happen,
Yeah. But it was hard on our hearts. I think it was always hard of us growing up. You would cook. That's where you learned how to cook. You used to cook dinner for us a lot.
Yeah.
And I think the difference, Pastor Louis told me this before, he was like, a lesser man would have fallen. I think we've been through a lot of different stuff where even being born is kind of a blessing.
Right.
Because
For
she was
you.
doing drugs, for me, right?
Yeah.
She was doing drugs while she was pregnant with me.
Mm-hmm.
So, like, statistically, scientific, like,
And,
I
like,
should have had defects. I should have been drawn to
Yeah.
drugs. Something should have been wrong.
Yeah.
But the grace of God, it wasn't.
Right.
So I think, what would you tell somebody? One thing you would tell somebody that has lost somebody, that is dealing with a loss, maybe a significant loss, and they really are struggling.
Yeah, I think I would definitely say live through it and, like, don't ignore it, because in the long run, like, you're just going to be hurting yourself.
Right.
If you're not dealing with your pain, then it's not going to go anywhere.
Right.
And I think that's a big thing for sure, because I know for you didn't deal with it for a while, and then it got to the point where you're like, what am I going to do? So I think, like, coming face to face with it and just being like, okay, like, I have to deal with this now. Like, I have to live with this and live through this, and come out on the other side just, like, stronger, and knowing that Jesus has you.
Yeah, I think.
What was your moment like when you realized that?
Yeah, I think I dealt with a lot of anger, a lot of, like, different copes and things I would do. Realizing now that, like, there was a root to it. Like, I legit would always ignore it. I wouldn't answer questions. I wouldn't want to talk about it. I wouldn't even legit the mind thing. I wouldn't even think about it because I knew what would happen. And there was a root to it. Like, a snotty nose isn't the root of, like, your cold. Like, it's just a symptom. And I think anger and things like that was just a symptom of what I was dealing with was hiding my pain and things like that. And I think once I started to mature in Jesus, mature in myself and being a man, like, expressing it, being vulnerable. And I think that's what we want to do here on this channel, going through experiences, going through stories, and seeing perspectives from where you were to where you are now. So 6 years later, where are you now? Like, where are you now after that?
I definitely think that it's a daily battle, especially with, like, big moments that have happened in my life, like getting married, having a baby. I just go back to, like, I wish my mom was there. And I think that's been really hard. Even just, like, randomly wanting to call her, like, how did you do this? Like, how did you have 2 kids? Like, I don't even know how I'm doing it.
Yeah.
So I think that's been the new battle of, like, not having her with me. But, like, you're going to grieve every day. Like, you're going to go through things. You're going to see things that's going to remind you of her, or whoever you lost. But there's always something greater on the outside of it, and you were built for this, and you were, like, made to go through this. So I think that's just what I remind myself of, or just, like, think, like, oh, she probably would have did this, you know.
Yeah, you at 22, 23?
23.
23. At 23, you have 2 beautiful kids. You are married. You have a house. You have a really good church family. You have, like, a really good-looking brother or something. Not the other one, me.
I'm dead.
But I think Mama would be really proud of us.
Yeah.
I think what we've been through, the stumbles and everything like that, I think she'd be proud of where we are. So thank you for your vulnerability, blessing us, blessing the people with your vulnerability. And again, we hope this helps somebody. We hope it helps. Maybe us. Maybe we watch this
I hope
back.
it helps you.
And it helps. And it helps. So thank you for tuning in to Small Talk with Jay Calvin. Which
And
is
Jennah.
ironic. And Jennah. It's ironic. It's not really small talk. But this has been Small Talk with Jay Calvin. Let's go. Good job. Good job. Good job. Great job.